All right, so today we're going to talk about something huge, the Indonesian Revolution. This was a brutal 4-year struggle that saw a 300-year-old colonial empire just crumble, and in its place, a brand new nation was born. It's an incredible story of defiance, of sacrifice, and of a people fighting for their own place in the world.
I mean, just listen to that. That's a desperate call to arms, broadcast by a general from his sickbed. It perfectly captures the spirit of this revolution. A nation that felt betrayed, that was pushed right to the very brink, but was absolutely, totally unwilling to give up. And that really gets the heart of it, right? How in the world did this happen? How did a brand new republic with its leaders captured and its cities occupied actually manage to win against a major European power? Well, the answer is a story of just incredible resilience. Okay, so to understand how this all kicked off, we've got to rewind a bit, back to World War II, because that's the event that just completely shattered the 300-year-old Dutch colonial system. So when the Japanese invaded in 42, they just dismantled Dutch authority almost overnight. It was gone. And even though the occupation was unbelievably brutal, Japan's promise of independence and then their sudden surrender in 45, well, it created this massive power vacuum. It was the moment. The one Indonesian nationalist had been waiting for. And the human cost of that occupation was just staggering. Look at that number. An estimated 4 million Indonesians died from famine and forced labor. That kind of suffering, it just hardens your resolve. You decide you are never, ever going to be ruled by a foreign power again. Right, so you've got this perfect storm. The Japanese are out, the Dutch haven't made it back yet. For the Indonesian nationalists, it was now or never. They knew they had to move, and they had to move fast. And that's exactly what happened. August 17th, 1945. We're talking just 2 days after Japan's surrender. These radical youth groups, the Pemuda, they basically forced the issue. They went to the older nationalist leaders, Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta, and said, look, the Allies are coming to put the Dutch back in charge. We have to do this now. So Sukarno stepped up and declared independence. And this is it, the proclamation. It sounds so simple, right? Just a couple of sentences. But those words, man, they were like a match to gasoline. They lit a revolutionary fire and told the entire world that a new nation was born. But here's the thing. Declaring independence is one thing. Actually defending it, that's a whole different ballgame. And the first big test, surprisingly, didn't come from the Dutch. It came from the British, who had landed to disarm the Japanese.
And it all started with a flag. This incident at the Hotel Yamato in Surabaya just lit the fuse for the whole thing. Dutch internees, with some help from the Japanese, hoist the Dutch flag. The local Indonesian militia sees this, and they are not having it. They storm the hotel, climb up to the roof, and just rip that blue strip right off the bottom, turning it into the red and white Indonesian flag. What an act of defiance.
And that one act just unleashed total chaos. I mean, listen to Sukarno's own words here. This wasn't some clean, organized battle. It was a raw, brutal explosion of anger and revolutionary spirit.
So, things escalate. The British commander, Brigadier Malaby, gets killed in the fighting. And that's when the British respond with everything they've got. A full-on assault on Surabaya. For 3 weeks, you had these Indonesians, most with barely any modern weapons, fighting back with just incredible ferocity. In the end, the British took the city, yeah, but the battle sent a clear message. This new republic was willing to fight and die for its freedom.
The British pretty quickly realized they didn't want to get stuck in a long colonial war, so they pulled out. And that opened the door for the Dutch military to come back in force. They were absolutely determined to take back what they still saw as their colony. And just listen to the language they used. It says so much. The Dutch called their campaigns police actions, as if they were just restoring law and order. But for Indonesians, no way. This was Dutch military aggression, a foreign invasion, plain and simple. And these aggressions were devastating. In 2 huge offensives, the Dutch grabbed all the valuable economic areas. Then, in late 1948, they captured the republic's capital, Yogyakarta. They arrested President Sukarno and his entire government. From the outside, it looked like it was all over. The revolution seemed to be crushed for good. And for decades, the official story was that these were just clean police actions. But recent history tells a very different story. A huge study in 2022, actually funded by the Dutch government, came to a stark conclusion. The Dutch army was guilty of systemic and extreme violence, a truth they had hidden for over 70 years. But the Republic just refused to die. Even with its political leaders in exile, the revolution found a way to fight on. They started waging a war on two very different fronts.
And this right here is one of the most remarkable stories of the entire war. You have the military commander, General Sudirman, who is literally dying of tuberculosis. He refuses to surrender, so his soldiers carry him on a stretcher through the jungles of Java for 7 months. And from that litter, he leads a guerrilla resistance that made the Dutch occupation a nightmare. He became the living symbol of Indonesia's unbreakable will to fight.
And this really shows you that two-front war they were fighting. On one side, you've got Sudirman's guerrillas in the jungle, making the country ungovernable. On the other side, you've got Indonesian diplomats in places like the United Nations fighting for international recognition. And this, right here, is the game changer. The Dutch military actions were a diplomatic disaster. The United States, which was bankrolling the Netherlands' recovery after World War II with the Marshall Plan, started to get really fed up. Washington basically gave them an ultimatum: stop fighting and negotiate, or we cut off the aid. The Hague really had no other choice. So the final act of this incredibly bloody war wasn't fought in a jungle or a city street. It was fought in a conference room in The Hague, right in the seat of the Dutch government itself. So after months of negotiations, they finally reached a deal. And on December 27, 1949, more than 4 long years after that first declaration of independence, the Netherlands officially recognized Indonesia's sovereignty. The war was finally over. But, of course, independence came with some major strings attached. Indonesia had to make some big concessions. First, they had to agree to take on a huge amount of the old colonial government's debt. Think about that. They were basically forced to pay for the very war the Dutch had just fought against them. And the territory of West New Guinea would remain under Dutch control, setting the stage for a lot more conflict down the road. So, they did it. The revolution had succeeded. A nation was forged in fire, born from the ashes of a world war and a colonial empire. But as we know, winning a war is one thing. Building a unified nation from thousands of islands and hundreds of different cultures, well, that's another fight entirely. The fight for independence was over, but the struggle to define Indonesia's future was really just getting started.